Mobile app dev has never been easier, and at the heart of this low-code, no-code revolution is Flutterflow. It's powerful. John, Flutterflow is not scalable. Well, sucks for the web. I know, but spaghetti code. And if your app's actually successful, you'll outgrow it. Alright. You ever tried Python? Well, not to brag, but I have written a Hello World app in Python. Copilot helped me. Good enough. Let's talk about the mobile magic app stack. Patent pending. In this video, I'll talk about the 4 most common complaints about Flutterflow that Python will solve. Vendor lock and scalability are a huge concern for app developers. Firebase is notorious for vendor lock. Supabase literally exists so you don't have to use Firebase. Oops, now you're vendor locked with Supabase. But also Firebase, because you need it for push notifications. Control where your business logic happens. Don't expect Firebase to build you a unique app that solves a problem that's never been solved before. Think about it. Uploading user images, performing any kinds of calculations, creating complex database queries, hitting third-party APIs and manipulating the results, running AI, running background tasks. Anything else you can think of, anything else you can dream of, should be happening on the back end. Can't just expect Firebase to handle all of this for you if you want it done well and to create something unique. So here's why Python is awesome here. You create your Flutterflow app in the simplest way possible, which is with Firebase off, and then you hit a button and push notifications work. Now, Firestore is keeping track of your users, but also crucially is keeping a record of your device tokens, which you need for the push notifications to work. And that is where you stop using Firestore, because as a database, it's shit. But more than that, your backend is not just a database. With Python, you can perfectly manicure your inputs and your outputs. And so the Flutterflow part becomes less about logic and doing crazy gymnastics with actions and custom code, and you can start focusing on what it's good at, which is building a robust UI. Of course, you can do this with any backend language, but Python is easy to learn, has amazing libraries, has a gigantic community, and it can do literally anything. And now, the Flutterflow scaling problem does not exist. You gotta remember that what Flutterflow generates lives on each and every user's device. That means that Flutterflow itself doesn't care if it's serving 1 user or a billion users. It simply expects the Python API to accept its input and give it the right output. Now Python is controlling how the app scales, and Flutterflow can't possibly get in your way. I don't want to know how the sausage is made. If you've ever visited the Flutter dev subreddit on Reddit, you'll see scathing hate for Flutterflow. But these guys are missing the point completely of Flutterflow, which is not using the generator code. You stay with Flutterflow because once you download the code and work on it, it's no longer compatible with Flutterflow. It's just a Flutter code base. And from that point of view, no, it's not perfect Flutter code, and you probably should have just written the thing in Flutter yourself. However, if you've been clever and you've written your backend in Python, well, Flutterflow generated code will be 100 times simpler because there'll be far less logic on the front end shoved in where it doesn't belong. And you might have a shot at downloading it if you really want to. Before I read other people's views about this, I knew this intuitively made sense anyway. If you're going to build a complex JavaScript-based application, you should probably write it in JavaScript. Just saying. I think if you want a web app, and that's the core of your business, I don't think Flutterflow is actually the right framework. I think it's one of the few tools on the market that excels with mobile app development, and that's its superpower. But using Flutterflow for web apps is a bit like calling Superman to summon all the aquatic life of the deep ocean to reclaim the throne of Atlantis. I mean, he could probably figure it out, but... So what if you want both? A web app and an awesome mobile app? Aha, Python saves the day again. Because your business logic, your emailing, your third-party APIs, and even your push notifications triggers are actually happening from Python. So you use Flutterflow for mobile and a JavaScript framework for the web. Flutterflow has its limits. That's literally the point of an abstraction. Flutterflow is an abstraction over Flutter, just like Flutter is over Swift, and Swift is over C++, and C++ is over assembly, and assembly over machine code, and machine code over me opening the case and flicking transistors on and off one by one. The reason this argument totally misses the point is that there's always layers of abstraction in play. For each level of abstraction, we become more productive and things get easier, and in turn, we lose that equivalent in flexibility. It's a bit like saying, I prefer to code up my spreadsheets in C++ rather than Microsoft Office, just in case one of my spreadsheets happens to need multi-threading and custom memory management to calculate my grocery budget. If outgrowing Flutterflow does happen, and because you used Python on the backend, that'll take a long time if it ever does happen, your Python API, along with your Firebase integration, they're intact, so they don't need to be rewritten. All you have to do is recreate the UI in Flutter or in native code, but all of the business logic where all of your hard work really lives will be unchanged and ready to be hooked up to the new codebase. All the same, you'd be amazed how far you can get with Flutterflow if you supercharge your project with a Python backend. Hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe and drop a like if you're finding the content helpful. And I'll be back soon with more app development topics using Python and Flutterflow.